Greetings, my friends. Please make certain that you are still subscribed to this channel because every day I'm hearing from other people that they have been unsubscribed without their knowledge by YouTube. And if you are not subscribed, please consider supporting this channel. We need you. Thank you. Months ago, as the plague of the Koof swept the land, I reported on the rumored end of a different kind of plague. A plague on Star Wars named Kathleen Kennedy. At that time, my sources assured me with confidence that Kathleen Kennedy was all but gone at Lucasfilm, that following the failure of the Disney sequel trilogy, her failure was complete, and that her contract would simply not be renewed in 2021. I am convinced that this was the plan. Several sources have confirmed it, and the fact that The Mandalorian has been refreshingly free of the taint of identity politics and woke wankery has supported the rumor that Kathleen Kennedy's influence over Star Wars at Lucasfilm has waned. Too late, perhaps, to save the franchise true, but nevertheless, thus far, after 1.5 seasons, The Mandalorian has proven itself to be something you can watch without fear of being inundated with Kennedy's brand of girl power politics. This is welcome relief for Star Wars fans, or at least for the diminished ranks of those comparatively few who remain after the debacle of The Last Jedi. And yet, for all that, just as the Koof has changed everything in our day-to-day lives, it seems the Koof has also potentially changed things at Lucasfilm. And the latest rumor from the highly reliable WDW Pro seems to indicate that Kennedy may not be leaving Lucasfilm as scheduled. What I'm about to share with you is my understanding of the current situation behind the scenes at Lucasfilm based upon the recent reporting from WDW Pro, from my own sources who have proven themselves to be reliable in the past, and other information I surmise from other news sources. But that said, I cannot independently verify any of what I'm about to tell you, so please consider what I present in this video to be rumor and/or speculation, and take it with a grain of salt. In a recent post on the website piratesandprincesses.com, the highly reliable insider WDW Pro posted an article titled, "Disney Plus May Save Kathleen Kennedy's Job." In this post, WDW Pro acknowledges that while it was his or her understanding that Kennedy would be leaving her position as head of Lucasfilm once her contract ended, the situation at Lucasfilm is in flux, and Kennedy may have found a way to resurrect her career from the grave. We're hearing that a change is afoot over at Lucasfilm. Whereas previously we had believed that Kathleen Kennedy would leave her position as head of Lucasfilm when her contract ends, taking a legacy position within the Walt Disney Company, we now believe that might be in question. According to sources familiar with the ongoings of Lucasfilm, we now believe that Mrs. Kennedy may be positioning herself to stay at Lucasfilm. We're not sure how this affects Jon Favreau and how he perceives his future with Star Wars. The change, we believe, is that Mrs. Kennedy now has a successful series in The Mandalorian, and the future of entertainment appears to be long-format series on streaming platforms. Big-budget feature films may no longer be the king of the cinematic revenue system, and rather series like The Mandalorian and Stranger Things could be the paradigm shift. Combined with the power of a successful series on Disney+, perhaps the most important asset on Disney+, the job opportunities in Hollywood going forward are limited and changing. Whereas Kennedy would have had her choice of positions before the pandemic, that's no longer so certain. This provides her with incentive to keep the current job. We also believe that she's interested in pushing her ideological views, and a new strategy is being formed in which properties like The Mandalorian are protected from such measures, while other new series are given license to push the philosophical boundaries. We believe Leslie Headland is part of that strategy. So, let's break this down, shall we? First of all, let's examine the question of Kennedy's options at other studios. My sources told me many months ago that Kennedy was having a very hard time finding somewhere else to land, either because of the Koof or because, while Disney may spin it for PR purposes that Kennedy did a fine job handling Star Wars during her tenure, the rest of Hollywood sniffs the stench of failure in the wind when she passes, and may not be eager to replay the debacle of the sequel trilogy with their own franchises, especially given the current political climate in the SJW capital of the world, Hollywood. This issue isn't so much hiring Kennedy, as problematic as that may be to anyone who has followed this debacle. The issue is more getting rid of Kennedy if she doesn't work out, an issue that Disney is having to deal with at the moment. Think about it. Disney right now is skating on the thinnest ice it has ever encountered. Park revenue is down, movie revenue is almost non-existent, layoffs have happened at Disney at ESPN recently with more on the way, and the losses continue to tally on the balance sheets. Pretty much the only thing they have going right now are their streaming services. They are deathly afraid of losing any more of their audience, and so according to WDW Pro and other sources, Disney is scared to do anything that will rock the boat or get any segment of their audiences angry enough to stop their subscriptions. Allowing Kennedy to leave when she doesn't want to go is a risky proposition given how tenuous things are financially, as Disney fears the controversy of showing a female executive to the door, even one who has failed so spectacularly. When I first reported the rumor that she was leaving, it was a much more amicable parting of the ways. They weren't firing her after all, they were simply not renewing her contract. Kennedy was surely confident at that point she would be moving on to greener pastures, either to another studio or with a production deal at Disney under her own company banner. But the coup has changed all of that. The crisis has proven to be so entrenched and only getting worse, and every day the theaters and theme parks and restaurants are shut down, Hollywood is worse and worse off. Suddenly, Kennedy finding a safe landing outside of Disney is less and less of a sure thing. And according to WDW Pro, she has had a change of heart and is trying to exert pressure to keep her job at Lucasfilm. It's not hard to understand why other companies are not eager to hire Kennedy at this point. After all, any company that brings her on will face the same dilemma that Disney is facing now. The fear that getting rid of her if things went south would be a PR disaster. Indeed, my sources told me a rumor many months ago that Kennedy was really having a hard time finding a place at any other studio and was having a change of heart about leaving. So WDW Pro has confirmed this in this article. Furthermore, I reported on October 22nd that Kennedy was shepherding a new project over at Lucasfilm, a young adult novel called Children of Blood and Bone, a fantasy novel that had a strong anti-police bias implied in the plot and addressed directly in a politically charged afterword in the book. At the time, I surmised that this was a project to placate Kennedy, to allow her to insert her identity politics into a project no one knew about or cared about. How badly could she screw it up? I figured at the time, this signaled that either she would be hands-off of Star Wars moving forward, or this was a project that she would personally be handling with her own production company in a joint development deal with Lucasfilm. Well, at this point, WDW Pro, with this rumor, seems to verify that while Kathleen Kennedy may be finished where Star Wars is concerned, she may very well be keeping her position at Lucasfilm. Quote, "We also believe that she's interested in pushing her ideological views, and a new strategy is being formed in which properties like The Mandalorian are protected from such measures, while other new series are given license to push the philosophical boundaries. But even if Kennedy wishes to stay on at Lucasfilm, surely she doesn't have the support behind her, you might say. And to some degree, you'd be right. Kennedy botched the sequel trilogy to the point there's almost no marketing whatsoever for those characters any longer. The original trilogy and the prequel trilogies both have beloved characters decades later. All true. And while I tend to believe this is the case, there is evidence to support that Kennedy is still managing to suckle on the jugular of Star Wars like an undead leech. Case in point, the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special. Look at this horrible thing. Far from leaving the Disney sequel trilogy behind, This LEGO special follows Rey on a trip through time as she emerges at key points in Star Wars history, schooling Yoda, schooling Luke, and generally reinforcing the contemptible Kennedy-esque conceit that she is the bestest ever. Is that the action of a company looking to decanonize the Disney sequel trilogy that alienated a vast segment of the fan base? And what's more, this last episode of The Mandalorian had some disturbing elements in it, suggesting that this story as well may be moving toward tying into the sequels, reinforcing them and validating them. If that is the case, if The Mandalorian turns out to be nothing more than a prequel to Luke sucking on green milk and Palpatine surviving Return of the Jedi and the amazing Wonder Ray being the bestest ever, then this will be the final death blow for Star Wars. Right now, Star Wars is a franchise on life support. It's like having your grandpa in the hospital in an iron lung. He's technically alive, but he's not vibrantly alive. Like The Mandalorian, Grandpa doesn't have the energy to converse with you about anything new in his life because his life is on hold in that iron lung. He isn't entirely lucid either, but he's there all right. And every week you can visit him, and it's very comforting to see him, even though all he can do is tell you stories of his life that you've heard before, rehashing the same old characters, the same old settings, the same old incidents. And it's nice enough to hear, but you get the feeling of being in a kind of suspended life support yourself. It's reassuring to go to the hospital every week and see him there, and you can tell yourself Grandpa is still alive, all hope is not lost. But Grandpa just isn't the same. That's The Mandalorian right now. Star Wars is on life support. It's comforting to see it still breathing, yeah, but the joy is only there in fits and starts. IG-11, Gina Carano, Baby Yoda sometimes. There's still hope, but that hope is fading, Disney. You let Kennedy continue down the path she started. You let Kennedy turn The Mandalorian toward her sequel trilogy. Just know that you're turning off the iron lung and letting Star Wars go once and for all. But this still appears to be at least a partial victory for the fandom menace in that they seem to have realized that Kathleen Kennedy is poison to Star Wars or any legacy property. They have understood now the terrible influence that Kathleen Kennedy has had on the fandom, the terrible devaluation of Star Wars that has resulted under her reign, and so at least it appears likely that she will not be negatively influencing Star Wars anymore. They are going to keep her identity politics out of the franchise. Perhaps too late, but otherwise, this is a win for the fandom menace. The bad news is that like a revenant, like Palpatine himself under the Disney sequel trilogy, she may yet be rising from the ashes. And that is bad news for Star Wars fans everywhere. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry. Ha 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 ha.